And I got out my trombone at one point and I played the Twins song, you know, you know, you know that one.
Yeah. So welcome to One Man Band and our Masters of the Musiverse series. Today I'm speaking with Michael Levine of the Dallas Brass and Harmony Bridge. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Absolutely.
Michael is the founder of both organizations. His passion for music and the way it connects us is really inspiring. I've had the pleasure of working with Michael and the Dallas Brass in the past with my high school groups. It was a great time. And so really looking forward to this conversation. And really anytime I talk to you, Michael, it's been a great time for me. So thank you for joining us.
Same here. Thank you.
So I did a little bit of research on you, and I went into your bio on the Dallas Brass website. And I don't think I knew before I met you that you had studied at the University of Minnesota and then Juilliard.
Right.
And then you became the assistant principal trombonist of the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra for a number of years.
Right. Yeah. It's right before I finished Juilliard, I heard about an audition over there in Israel. Actually, I didn't go to play in the Jerusalem Symphony. I went there to play in an orchestra called the Galilee Orchestra. It was a new orchestra they were starting in the Galilee, and it was incredible. I mean, it was like really stepping into another world. I started off in Tiberias, and I had an apartment that overlooked the Sea of Galilee. I mean, this is like really. And then I moved to Nazareth, and I spent a half a year in Nazareth. And when I was there, we had the opportunity to play. I mean, some of the highlights were we played at Manger Square in Bethlehem on Christmas Eve. We had a brass group that played there. I mean, really, it's like, this is like surrealistic. Yeah. And then we also played in Nazareth at the Church of the Annunciation, which has monumental biblical, connections, and where the Virgin Mary was supposed to, have conceived Jesus and the whole bit. And so we played there on Easter morning. So it was pretty amazing. And then the second year I went to Jerusalem, and then I played in the symphony there. So it was incredible.
Yeah, that is just like you must have constantly been like, am I really at the Galilee? Like
I know. It was something else, and it was a whole different, like I say, a whole different world. And in Jerusalem, now I played in the orchestra, which was great, but a great experience. But I think the most interesting part about it is that this is really where I cut my teeth on developing the Dallas Brass, because we had a brass quintet, the Jerusalem Brass Quintet, and we would travel all over the country and play in army camps and small villages, and really bringing music to people that didn't have access to music. And that really is the spirit behind Dallas Brass, and also Harmony Bridge too. Yeah. So it was just a wonderful experience. I was there for 4 years total.
That's just amazing. And I do know from working with you that you really have a spirit for like that notion of what can I bring to these people? Like, can I bring something new? Can I bring, this gift of music out and show it to people? So that's really, like, knowing that the history of it's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's even interesting for me too to see how that developed, because the one thing that all my ventures have in common is that desire to share music. It's not about, we all love to play, and that's how it started. It's fun, and it's satisfying, and it's challenging, and it's rewarding in many ways. But when you get to that point where you realize that the greatest joy of all is sharing it and bringing happiness to other people, and that you can do something. I like to tell kids, I say, it's like being a chef. You may love to cook and find it very rewarding in many ways, but the ultimate is when you can share it with other people and see the joy that they have. And that, to me, is the greatest satisfaction of being a musician. And that can happen whether you're in 5th grade or you're a professional. And again, that's the spirit of Harmony Bridge.
Yeah. So let's kind of transition then. In 1985, you founded the Dallas Brass, and then you played trombone in the group until 2015. So I'm curious, like what circumstances led your transition from Israel to the Dallas Brass?
Well, when you live that far away, it's not like living in Minneapolis or in Chicago or New York or LA. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty extreme. And my family's here, and I grew up here. I'm still, the U.S. is still my home, and I felt after 4 years that it was just time to come home. So I left with a very heavy heart, but it was just time. And my mom and dad had moved from Minneapolis, where I grew up, to Dallas for my dad's job. So I went there just to check it out, and one thing led to another, and someone gave me an idea of forming a group to play for weddings, because they really like to have big weddings in Dallas, and and I thought, yeah, I can do that. I know exactly how to do that. And so we got a group together called the Splendor of Brass, and we played for a number of weddings and ceremonies and receptions. And I always tell people our first gig was the wedding, and the second gig was the reception. Where we brought a drummer in so we could give it a little more spice to the little more kick to the band, and that's how the drum thing developed in Dallas
Wow.
Brass. Um, and then we played a lot of background music. We played receptions and cocktail parties and grand openings, and then I realized that there's got to be something more. I mean, I'm not criticizing that, because that's a viable way to for a lot of musicians to make a living, but my concert background and my desire to really impact people led me to going a different direction, and I wanted to play when people would really listen and not just be shopping and socializing, and again, that's tied into the spirit of all this too.
Yeah.
So we got an agent, and I just reformed it and shaped it, and my inner desire just led me to the Dallas Brass. And now it's been, gosh, 1982 technically is when we played our first gig. So, we're coming up on 40 years.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
fascinating too, like thinking about, the onset of this group being about your personal experiences, like coming from a symphonic background, having
yeah,
your experience in Israel where you brought music to people, and then having the kind of the wedding gig like thing converge into one thing. And who would have ever thought that, like I'm sure you wouldn't have in 1985 that the
no,
Dallas Brass would be what it
no,
is today.
right. And the way you just put it together is exactly. I'm equally intrigued, and I think that that's probably true for most people. It's probably true for you as well. That what was your first love of music? Where did it start? And when we do clinics with Dallas Brass, we talk about the wow moments. What was it that triggered you, where you first went, aha, this is something special? And those things continue through your whole life, and they might take you different directions, but yet there's a connection too.
I was reminded this week of like one of the unique performance things that the Dallas Brass has done, and that's the piece "Hands" that you play.
Oh yeah,
Uh, um, so I want to share one thing with you, and then ask you about the history of that. But
yeah.
we were doing a piece called "Ham Bone" by Libby Larson a few years ago,
Oh,
and like ham bone, as far as like the body percussion, I think it comes from I think it actually has roots in like Western Africa, but the ham boning comes from um, the southern United States. And when we were doing that piece, I was like, oh man, I remember seeing the Dallas Brass do a piece called Hands.
uh-huh.
And so I got the music from you, and I had my band. I had my whole band program, like 150 kids learn some of the opening um, piece parts of Hands, and that transitioned into Libby Larson's Ham Bone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really fun. And so I can still do some of it if you wanted to,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm curious, what was the onset of that piece for you guys? What brought Mary Ellen Childs? Is that right? Is that the
Yeah,
person that wrote it? Yeah.
yeah. And she's a composer here in Minnesota. And
Oh, okay.
one of our former drummers was in a little trio a percussion trio that she was sort of not managing, but was involved with writing music for them. And she wrote, they developed that piece. I'm not saying necessarily she wrote it, but it developed, as
Sure.
they,
Yeah.
I think they did it on the spot, like, oh, let's try this, let's try that. And so it was originally intended for 3 players, and then of course we have 6, so it was easy to double the parts. And so he brought that idea to us, and it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
We love doing it every night. I mean, it's just, we love it as much as hopefully people enjoy it, and it's a challenge every night too, to keep that synchronization going. I mean, we never take it for granted, and there are many things that you can do to connect. The magic word, I think, is connect. To really connect with the audience, especially in this day and age where people have access to everything, between TV and YouTube and the internet in general. It's like, as when you go to a live performance, you need to really take responsibility to connect. I think that's a better word than entertain, but entertain is part of connect.
Yeah.
So that's not a casual matter. We take that very seriously.
When I was in college, I had this great opportunity. The Canadian Brass came through. They played with our
Oh yeah.
band in college, and then they said, "Hey, does anybody want to go out, afterwards and just kind of hang out?" So we went out to eat with Chuck, the tuba player, I'm forgetting the name of the trombone player at the time. Who was the long-time trombone? Yes. And so they sat. I got to sit at the end of the table as a college kid with these guys. We were at a Mexican restaurant, and they ordered a tamale between the two of them, and they ate from either end, and I think I must have been staring, because I'd never seen 2 grown men eat off the same plate. I think and it rolled into a question or a conversation where they said, "Look, we're touring this amount of time. We're in the recording studio this amount of time. We see each other way more than we see our own families. Like he's my brother, And so like, I'm kind of curious about your guys' schedule with the Dallas Brass. Like how many days are you on the road? How many days are you in a recording studio? How rigorous is your schedule?
Well, of course, it's very different now.
Yes, yeah, okay.
um,
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah, right. We've had, well, first of all, I want to say, the Canadian Brass has been a great inspiration to me as well. Back when I was in Israel, a friend of mine from the States sent me a recording to Israel, and I thought, man, these guys really play,
Yeah.
and they help bring the whole concept of the brass quintet out of the classical mode and into the public's into a public arena, and based on an entertainment piece as well. They have a different approach. It's a little bit more maybe comical, and everybody has their own angle, but what they did is they really broke barriers, and so I owe a lot to them as well, as far as their influence on me. But we've had years where we've played up to 150 concerts a year. We're on the road basically half the year. But it has, I mean, now it's the other extreme. We haven't played a concert in 6.5 months,
Yeah.
obviously, since the middle of March. And we do have our next concert scheduled in February, but my hunch is it'll be postponed.
Well, we've brought up Harmony Bridge a few times, so I
Yeah,
think now would be a great time for us to talk about that. I love your stories. I've had the opportunity to talk to you. I've listened to you in a few interviews, but I think my favorite story I've ever heard you tell is the story of when you were in South Dakota that marked really the
yeah,
beginning of Harmony Bridge. So
yeah,
could you tell us that story? I love it so much.
yeah, absolutely. It was a magical moment, and it was like a real epiphany. It was I felt like it came from higher powers. It just like, we were in the smallest town we've ever played in the history of Dallas Brass, and that, I think, is significant. A trip South Dakota, population I think was 650 at the time. I think they're up to 670 now, but it was uh, but and we played in the high school gym. It was like it was like the Music Man, like River City or Mayberry, Andy Griffith. The bank closed early, the grocery store closed early that day, so the employees could get ready for the concert. I mean, this was the biggest thing that had happened in Trip, like in the last, for maybe ever. And we played in the gym, and we had 800 people at the concert, even though the population was only 650, because people came from surrounding farming communities, and this was a big deal. So it was a lot of fun in and of itself. But after the concert, there was a reception, And I was visiting with some folks, and we got somehow talking about baseball. And growing up in Minneapolis, you know, I was a diehard Twins fan. I still am, but not, you know, not like when you're a kid. But
Right.
and uh, and they said, yeah, we got a lady in town who's a huge Twins fan. And I didn't think much of it because, you know, South Dakota, you expect Twins fans. And I didn't think much of it until they told me that this lady named Irma Walker was 107 years old. And
Wow.
I thought, that was exactly what I said. Wow. And I said, I've got to meet her. So the next day, we didn't have to leave first thing in the morning. And a couple of us in the band went over to the nursing home where she was living. And, uh, and we brought our instruments. And we went and visited with her. We went to her room and we talked with her. And she had pictures on the wall of her in her Twins jacket and her baseball cap and her, you know, and she loved Kirby Puckett. He was her favorite player, you know, so this goes back a few years. But
Mm-hmm.
and I got out my trombone at one point and I played the Twins song, you know. You know that one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was all smiles, and it was really, really neat. So then one of our trumpet players, there were a couple of us there, and he played Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And I played the national anthem, and he played America the Beautiful. We just took turns, just the melody. And then a nurse comes in the room, and she says, you guys, you need to see what's going on out in the hallway. We go out in the hallway, and it's bumper to bumper wheelchairs. I mean, like 8, 9, I don't know how many wheelchairs. People heard the music, and they just wheeled themselves out to get as close as they could. And they just lined up out in the hallway, and they were just listening. And this was the beginning of this realization. And so we stayed out there, and our trumpet player played more tunes. He played Amazing Grace. He played Danny Boy. He did, one lady wanted to hear Silent Night, even though it was April. And I watched and I saw people's eyes get big and their lips moving and their fingers tapping and their bodies swaying. And you could just feel the energy of the music, you know, penetrating. Um, and after all my years, you know, we played at Carnegie Hall and the Kennedy Center and all over the world and for big fancy, you know, concerts. And here I am standing in the hallway of Tripp, South Dakota, the nursing home in Tripp, and going, oh my gosh, this is what music's all about. This is the essence. And they didn't know that we were professionals. They didn't care. They
Yeah.
just knew that we were playing for them. We were playing songs that were meaningful to them, also significant. And then I had the second wave of realization came in when I thought, we have millions of people in senior homes, people who were active, vibrant members of their community. They had jobs, they had families, they were civic leaders, on and on and on and on. And now, because of the bittersweet nature of aging, they're restricted, they're limited, and they're isolated, and they can't go to concerts. And I just thought, and then I thought, wait, we have millions of kids in school bands, thanks to people like you, all over the country, in every town and city, thanks to school music in America, which is one of the few countries that has band in schools, um, that could be going out in their own communities and bringing joy to people that is priceless. And that was the beginning of the concept of Harmony Bridge. And I remember early on, I had a lady, when we were just experimenting, I had a lady in a senior home down in West Palm Beach. I remember vividly. And I interviewed her after the performance, and I said, do kids come often and play for you all? And she said, well, every year in December, we have kids in here like 2 or 3 times a day for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever. And she said the rest of the year, nothing. And so what you said is absolutely right on. You know, and Scott, I need to add something to this too, that, you know, I feel when we look at school music and you look at the why, I mean, we spend so much time teaching the craft and the technique and the, you know, how to play the different keys and the articulations and the sound and all the stuff. But I feel like maybe we don't spend as much time on the why as we should, because we're teaching kids something that is so powerful. If they learn that that back to the beginning of our conversation, that the ultimate is to be able to share what you've created, what you've learned, you know. And I feel like as band directors and music educators in general, we should spend more time focusing on that, you know, and not, and again, I'm with all due respect to what goes on, you know, the marching band and the basketball games and the contests and the trophies and the school concerts, which generally are for mom and dad or for families, you know, they don't often get past that. And with all that, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, but with all that, to add this dimension where we are connecting with the community, not just to do it for political reasons or because it looks good for the school and all that, but to do it because we're trying to teach kids that they have the ability. I tell kids, you're like superheroes. A superhero has special powers to make the world a better place. And you have those powers, you have those abilities, that the ability to bring joy to people. So you know, we could have a whole session just on this philosophy, but I'm trying so hard to get that message out there.
I think that it would be a good time to talk then specifically about the three tiers that you
Yeah.
call or you name for Dallas Brass. So let's start with that. Like, what are your three tiers?
Well, we call it the golden triangle, and it really is. It's the whole premise of what we've done with Dallas Brass. We never called it that over the years with Dallas Brass. This is just a term we came up with when Harmony Bridge developed. But it's musicianship, and it's the music itself, I guess, and then showmanship or the presentation, which we talked about briefly a few minutes ago, and then it's interaction. So the music is obvious. I mean, to play music on a high level, but also with that development of independent musicianship. The showmanship is about what we talked about earlier, teaching kids not just to hide behind their music stands and play the right notes, but to embrace the audience, to connect, and to have fun, and maybe, you know, have a little bit of humor and insight, and interact and talk to them, you know, ask them questions and get a conversation going, and that list goes on and on. And then the interaction for Harmony Bridge, what that meant pre-COVID was that after the kids played for, say, 30 minutes, they would stay and they would visit with the residents, and they would just talk to them one-on-one, like we would be out in the lobby. And it was magical. It was absolutely magical. There's a wonderful video that WCCO did on Harmony Bridge. Mike Max had a program, the WCCO sportscaster, and called Life to the Max, and he did a video on Harmony Bridge, and he focused mostly on the interaction. But when you got a 12-year-old kid talking to some guy who's 99 years old, and they just can't stop talking because they just are so interested in each other, I mean, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
So, and it means the world to these people to have these kids sit and want to know about them and tell me what life was like when you were a kid, and what'd you do for fun, and did you play in the band, and where did you grow up, and what was life like before cell phones and the internet, and you know, and kids are just fascinated. So
Yeah. So I would say would be one of the big distinctions of what makes Harmony Bridge very different from other, because there's other flexible ensemble stuff out there.
oh yeah, tons.
Yeah. But it's the teaching of the three tiers, and probably specifically the interaction piece, because it's oftentimes overlooked. And I do think it's very valuable because it's one of those things that we don't realize that we need to teach people is how we interact. Can you talk a little bit about how that piece is taught? Like, is it in the books? How do you teach interaction?
Well, let's talk. You know, look, we're in transition too, just like all of you are, you know, the band directors. Every day you're learning, and so we are too. But pre-COVID, when a school would take on Harmony Bridge, I would literally go out and spend the better part of a week in the community, and I would work with the students and the directors, and we would conclude the week with a kickoff performance, but then afterwards, they they visit with the people, and we talk to them about what would you ask people, and you want to find out about them. This isn't about you now. Now you're going to learn about them. So you're like interviewing them. So, a lot of it is just doing it.
Yeah.
But let me jump back to the COVID situation now. I can't go to the schools. I can't do the training, but I am doing some video work like this where I'll talk to the students and realizing they can't go into the senior homes. That's significant, obviously. But we've done performances like where this summer where we had the kids out in the parking lot or on the front lawn, and people would be uh, on their balconies or in their windows, and that's one thing that you could do. Of course, with winter coming, that'll be limited for those of us in the northern states. But there are other ways to do it, and you did this amazing thing that we all saw when you did the Pomp and Circumstance and found yourself on national news and Good Morning America. I mean, it's just incredible. But through video, through
Yeah.
the internet, we can do unbelievable things where you could produce a concert, a presentation, and you could do all the introductions and everything. Hey, everybody, and we wish we could be there today, but we can't, but we're going to do this concert for you. And my name's Mike. And you could do all the same stuff on video and send it to the homes. And some of the homes have told me that they have like movie rooms where they'll bring people down and they can watch it on a big screen. Other places have said they have closed circuit TV where they could actually send the video to everyone's room through their TV.
Yeah.
Or they could take an iPad around. There are so many options.
So I'd like to say to anybody listening, all the band directors, music teachers out there, our first challenge is to just get whatever you're doing in your classroom right now, record it with a message and send it to and I would say that would be a really important thing, is to include a message so it feels like
Yeah.
we're doing this for you. This is a presentation we're doing for you.
Absolutely.
So that's our first challenge to you, is to do that. But I would like to then bring it back now to talk about how Harmony Bridge in the music makes it different.
Yeah.
How is the music that you've written different,
Yeah.
and more maybe more approachable, or more even ability to connect? It's got a better ability to connect maybe than some other things that are out there.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind that when you go back to the story that happened 10 years ago, the reason, as I listed some of the things then, the parameters, and the reason for those were to connect. And so, example, familiar music, songs that they know, that they don't just know, but they trigger memories from their childhood, whether it's Skip to My Lou, or Mary Had a Little Lamb, or When the Saints Go Marching In, or Let Me Call You Sweetheart, or whatever. They're songs that connect. We have a few original songs as well, but they're very friendly. They're very. I like to think of the music as being audience friendly. That's community friendly. So even the original songs are very much like that. But also, one of the things that we do, we have 3 books. There's a trio book for the younger players, then an intermediate book, which goes into 4 parts, and then the advanced book goes into 5 parts, so we add a voice. Percussion is included with everything, but we recommend it, especially with the intermediate and advanced book. But it can be optional as well. So the trio book is set up for like instruments or mixed instruments. So you could have 3 flutes or 3 trumpets, or a flute, a clarinet, a flute, a tuba, and a xylophone, whatever combination. So mixed or like similar. And in the trio book, it's in score form. And you can see that we've color coded each of the lines to help the kids navigate, because young kids are not used to skipping lines, and so we figured it'd be easier if you stayed in the pink, or you stayed in the yellow or the blue, and you could follow your part much easier. And the kids seem to like the colors anyhow. And then we also make sure that we pass the melody. That's huge, because that's teaching kids ensemble skills. I've got the tune, then you've got it, and then she's got it. And if I don't have when I have the tune, I bring it out. But if I don't have the tune, I'm very aware that I don't, and I back off a little bit. And then we use these dotted brackets, as you can see, which shows the kids when they have the melody. And I think we've been told by directors that the kids love it because it just makes them more aware, give kids a better sense of that it's not just whole notes and half notes and quarter notes and articulations, but it's what role you're playing in the music as you're playing your part.
Yeah.
How your function changes, because that's where we talk real music. And
Yeah.
so it's exciting. I'm as passionate about the pedagogical side of Harmony Bridge as I am about the outreach side.
Yeah, that, I mean, I love that idea that an ensemble would have some cues on, you know, like, oh, there's green brackets, so that means this is like a, you know, like you said, like a counter melody or something part, or just because I think kids, once they're cued into those ideas, they become more interactive with the music.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it can just be about playing the notes on the page, you know, like the, you know, they're little computers. I'm getting the data and playing it.
Well, right. And also that they tend to listen to themselves only. And
Right.
because that's when we practice, we're listening to ourselves, but we have to understand when we sit in an ensemble, you got to change that listening mode to what to everybody else. I mean, listen to yourself in relation to everything going on around you. And the intermediate book is set up with flexible instrumentation, but it's not, you at this point, it's not like you can have anybody play any part. It's set up SATB. So your top voice would be flutes or clarinets or trumpets, and then the bottom voice, which I think is the way more flex band music is set up.
Yes.
And then the 5-part book, again, it basically takes the voice forward and divides it out. So you know, your tubas are playing part 5 while your trombones are playing part 4. So, you know, before COVID, the music was not available to purchase. Only the program was. And when people embraced the program, I would come out to the community, as I said, and it was like an all or nothing thing. Because I don't want to just sell sheet music. That wasn't my motivation here to sell sheet music. My motivation was to launch this program, and I created the music to serve the program.
Right.
So that was always in my heart. I just didn't want to be a music distributor or a publisher. When COVID hit, it's like I realized that we have no choice. I can't go to the schools. So we decided we would sell the music, but still I want to be very involved with anybody that gets the music. We don't just go onto the internet and fill out the form or go to JW Pepper. We want to have a conversation with you. We want to understand what your program's about. We want to help you. We want to share with you what other people have done. And we want to inspire you to realize that you can do so much more with this music than just, you know, put it on their music stands and something else to play. And there's so much music out there. You don't need our music. You know, there's
Right.
tons of flex music. But so we want to have a connection with the community. So having said that, it's a matter of just going to our website and putting in your name and your contact information, and then we set up a call to have a visit with you, and we go from there. But you can just buy the music now. There's basically, it's $10 a book, you know, so it's not as big an investment as it was prior. And we don't, I do want to interject, we don't have it set up digitally. We don't do PDFs. And photocopying is just doesn't work for us, because the fact is all we have to generate any revenue are the books themselves.
Yeah.
We're doing it the old-fashioned way,
Yeah.
you know, which I love, and I think a kid loves to have their book. You know, it's this book. I've still got my where is it? My 5th grade band book, my
Yeah.
Bell first division band method, and in the back of my practice chart where I would forge my mother's initials. The first 3 weeks, you could tell my mom signed it, and then week 4, it's like it looked a little funny, you know, and but I've got where I wrote the positions in, and you know, that's one of my real keepsakes is that band book, and I'd like to think that the Harmony Bridge books would be that for these kids. Like they'll have it 30 years from now, and they'll go, wow, I remember Harmony Bridge. We used to go to the senior homes, and we used to, you know, I don't want this just, you know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
I'm kind of old fashioned that way. It's kind of sentimental that way.
Yeah.
It gets into that idea, which I know you agree with, that we're not teaching music, we're teaching people.
Yes.
And we use music to teach people. And how do we do that most effectively? But I think we get so caught up in teaching the music and the technique, and that we forget that there's just more to it than that.
Yeah.
We got to balance that.
Uh, the most significant thing I can do as a teacher is to do things like teaching compassion,
Yeah.
kindness, gratitude. And if I happen to be able to, get the B flat scale in there, and we do, we play, some great band literature in the process, that's fine. But my students need to go out in the world with those skills.
Yeah.
And so then obviously, like for me, it's like, okay, so I can do this through a really good quality, challenging music education. But really, like we do need to teach those skills. And I think to tie that back to Harmony Bridge, it's a great way to do it, at least to start it, is to teach them to give of themselves, to give of their time and energy and efforts to bring joy to somebody else.
Back from the beginning of Harmony Bridge, we were always encouraging people to get the money from the community, the Rotary, the Lions, the Kiwanis, school foundations. I mean, we've had Walmart get money, because Harmony Bridge was about the community. It wasn't like you were just buying, new music stands or a tuba or marching band uniforms. You were taking a program that was going to give back to the community. And if the directors really feel that sense that they do want to give back to the community, whether it's through performing in the parking lot or sending videos or just establishing the connection, I am convinced that they can get all the funding they need from the community.
I really appreciate your time today. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah, you too, Scott. This is great, and the best part is what's coming. I'm convinced that we've got something that lies ahead of us, which is the best part. So
yeah, thank you so much, Michael. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Talk to you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.